Hello, Richard Loveridge here. I'm the creative director of Proctors, and I'm here today for the Historical Committee. And another one of I think our 51st wonderful interview. And today we have Chris Sheehan. And Chris Sheehan is the director of our School of Performing Arts. Is that the
That's
is that
correct.
the title?
I used to be education director.
That's
now
the title.
I'm the director of the School of Performing Arts.
That's wonderful. Wow. You know, we're going to hear a lot of big numbers today, and we're going to hear about all these amazing successes, but there was a first day. So I think what we'd be interested in, what fewer people know probably, is why Chris Sheehan and why an education department at all?
Well, once upon a time I was an intern here at Proctors, and our executive director passed away, and the board did a national search. And so at that time, Philip interviewed me. I was an employee about that time, but Philip interviewed me, and he wanted to know about my background in education. He had heard about, my background in music and education, and he knew we didn't have an official education program here, and he asked me to build one.
What was your background in education, if I may
have
ask?
a music education degree, and I also did business administration. So that's what I did before. And so he tapped me, and little did I know what it would encompass all these years,
Right.
but I agreed, and that's how we started. That was in 2002.
2002, and what did it look like in the first year or two?
Back then, we started by building whole school-wide partnerships. We always had, even before I started, there was a youth program where we bussed children here to watch performances on our stage. And so we just built on that. So, the philosophy really back then with Philip and myself was, there's a lot that the arts can offer to education. That's the transformation of teaching and learning. So we started there, and we built, programs for Schenectady City School District, which was one of our major partners. And now we have, almost a dozen school partnerships where we build programs for their students. And we also bring them here for live performances. We built in artist workshops way back then. We did artist residencies where we connected artists that came here for our shows to common, to curriculum. So, one of the first projects that we did was with Miss Saigon, for example.
Oh, wonderful.
And we connected it to history, the global history classes. So those kind of things are what we developed first of all. We started a summer program even way back all those years ago. In just a couple of programs.
Oh, did you really?
Yep.
I wasn't aware of that.
So that's how we started, little by little, and then over the years we've just refined our programming, we refined our partners, we decided, we established funding mechanisms, and those sorts of things.
I know from having gone to Broadway League conferences that our education department is quite different, I think, than like the baseline theater education department. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I think every market needs to establish and brand their education program to what's needed in the community, right? So we have needs in our school partners that we want to serve, and we just make sure that whatever we build for our education program is in response to a community need. So one of the things we decided early on was that we were going to develop training programs, and that's how we started our summer programs. And we've continued to build and add, as people tell us, this is what I really like to see, this is what my students are interested in, and so we continue to do that. How do you see them differently?
I see that, often I see that they're pretty much show-driven, a lot of the programs. So whatever the show requires, and they have a wonderful, like your Miss Saigon tie-in, I hear a lot about that, and maybe occasionally some other, as you said, special need that a school has. But I feel like we've taken it a great deal further. I don't know if they're, certainly we're headed there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you keep your shoes on, it gets crazy. In this room, we hear a lot about the history. So just getting away from education a little bit for a second, or maybe not, you're in a very different place, right? I mean, we've heard the history from myself here, from Peter Hughes, so we've heard it from marketing, from production. As the education person, how have you seen the changes that we've all seen, this great development here? What special insights do you have into Proctor's development that the public sees, that you see from the education department?
Similarly, you mean?
That could be.
Not sure where you're going with this.
Yeah, maybe not.
What do I see
Well, like,
that
I
they
mean,
see that they don't see?
I mean, I point to, the certain space being built, and for you, that means a new opportunity, like GE Theater comes online.
Right.
And for some people, that's a construction thing, right?
Right,
But for
right.
you, what does that, what did these important steps, the bringing of the GE Theater, the gallery being built upstairs, again, thinking from your husband, Dan Sheehan's
Right.
point of view, he would speak of those from the architectural and technical point of view, but each of those things has its impact in your world, which is very different. And again, most people don't see it unless they have kids.
Right, right. Well, we always built programs to not be constrained by, is that a word, constrained? Constrained by
Could be.
space, because
Right.
we can have master classes anywhere.
Okay.
The building of the Addy is particularly important because we've grown out of our space here. We have people who want to rent it all year long.
Right.
It's not ideal performing space. It's not ideal training space. So upstairs we'll have the opportunity to really expand, spread our wings, I guess you could say.
That has to be, we should probably step our way into the Addy, because that sounds like that's not even, that's
Well,
not
we can go back if
that's
you
not penultimate, that's the ultimate, right, in a sense.
Yeah.
What other, if I think of your program, I think you and I have been speaking about this recently, that having the rep come on board, where all of a sudden now we're
Right.
we're producing children's
Right.
theater, which is
Right.
complete. Can you speak? That's our on-the-go
Definitely.
program.
I think there have been a number of times over the years that we've had those epic growths, right? One of them was definitely when we took on administration of Capitol Repertory
Right.
Theater, because we took on all of their education programs. Obviously, they're a producing house, so that gave us opportunity to leverage the producing side of our organization that we said we would never do.
But that must have been so great for your staff too, right? Because all
Right.
of a sudden you're not simply
Right.
connecting people to teachers and
Right.
it's kind of benign, but you're actually,
Yes, we're actually
making.
producing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's still a really strong theme that we
Right.
deliver in education, is that producing new work is really critical to young audiences, right? So we love to do that, and the on-the-go program that Capitol Repertory Theater does, it not only enables us to go out into schools and deliver really professional work, but it also gives artists the opportunity to earn their equity card. So,
How
working
interesting.
on that
I
workforce
hadn't thought of that with
development
our
thing.
young actors, right?
Definitely.
Now, for the folks that don't understand the on-the-go, can you explain, why on-the-go? Why not just have them come to the theater? What's so cool about being able to bring a show to the kids in their own school?
Well, you eliminate all the transportation complications that schools have, and they also have a number of scheduling difficulties. So when you eliminate, at least part of the complication, it makes it easier for some schools to be able to have a field trip. Some simply can't leave the building, so
Right.
it gives us the chance to go in and deliver something on a school's own territory.
Yeah, and you're bringing 3 people there instead of bringing 150
50.
people here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool.
And cost effective too. So if a school has a really limited budget, they can,
Yes.
as many people as they can fit into their auditorium, they can host.
That's
So,
wonderful.
Yeah.
And when did that start now?
Capitol Repertory Theater did On the Go before we came
They did,
by.
right? That was going
Yes.
on?
So
Yeah.
we just continued to expand the program and extend the tours and develop new work accordingly throughout
wonderful.
the years. Yeah. So
Let's see, I have other things. This is one I had actually forgotten, and it was Lecco Morris actually that reminded me of it, had it in my notes, was professional development. I think that's certainly, I guess, is that the new horizon? I mean, is that where you feel a lot of this is heading?
you mean workforce development?
Workforce development.
Workforce development.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you explain
definitely.
that to us?
I think
Since I don't even know what it's called.
well, Proctors, I would say a strong theme of what our future priorities are going to be in education are going to be around workforce development. So, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of jobs in the creative and performing arts, and when students come here or participate in one of our training programs, we remind them, for every one actor on stage, there are literally
Right.
dozens of jobs that support that actor.
This is like the sports analogy, isn't it?
Right, right.
Where the kid's interested in basketball, but there
Yes.
are 25 sports lawyers to every basketball
lawyers,
player.
designers,
Right,
stage managers, you know, definitely from design all the way through to production. So we want to highlight those careers in the arts as well as provide training opportunities.
So this is very, very different from having some children making masks just at, you know, which isn't a bad thing, of course.
right.
But this is much more ambitious, isn't it?
Definitely.
Definitely. What internal, it seems like we're stepping into different areas, even definition-wise and legally. I mean, that must be, this gets into my whole question to you. How many students do we service every year?
Well, we've come a long way in the past
Yeah.
15 years. So we started with about 20,000 when I came on board. We would bring about 20,000 kids in to see shows. We're now up to about 45,000 students across all of our organizations. That's Proctors and Capitol Repertory
Right.
Theater. You know, we expanded the number of performances, a number of education events that we offer each year from 100 to 500. We developed and expanded a scholarship program, and we give away almost $150,000 or more every year in scholarships to both school districts, schools, and individuals to participate in our programs. You know, we developed an internship program, which is a remarkable and really strong initiative that we started several years ago, and we now we host over 40 interns a year. Across our programs. And I think another, if you want to talk about epic leaps, another epic leap we made, it was incremental for a while, but it's our summer program.
Right.
Our summer program is, you know, one of our signature training programs, and 3 years ago, we decided to reinvigorate and really establish our Broadway camp as the premier training opportunity that we deliver. So we produce a Broadway show every summer over 4 weeks, and students who
Now, is this connected to the High School Musical Theater Awards?
Nope. So we offer training in acting, theater production, and orchestra, so pit orchestra. So students in all those 3 areas can come and do training with us throughout the
How
summer.
many kids are involved in one production?
In one production, we can have as many as 60 kids. Last year we had
amazing.
64 kids, I believe. So that, in addition to the other 15 programs that we do over the summer, and we now host about 250 students over the summer. Dozens of adjunct faculty and interns participate in that. Not to be confused with the High School Musical Theater Awards.
Right. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's certainly another leap forward in production.
Right. I
And
think,
being on the national stage, if you will. Right?
Yeah, the leap definitely was, I think, the branding decision to brand a school of the performing arts here. So that encompasses all of our training programs, as well as it raises our profile both nationally and locally. So one of the national programs that we decided to launch was the High School Musical Theater Awards. And that makes us a regional representative to send 2 finalists to the National High School Musical Theater Awards, the Jimmy Awards, in New York City every year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's
we
quite a
produce
compliment, isn't it, that schools would actually use their funding sources in a sense, right? But have the actual education take place here or through our systems.
True.
So how do you do it with so few staff?
Well, we don't have so few staff anymore, I'm happy to say. That's one of the...
How did you do it with so few staff?
Well, you know, continuous incremental improvement we strive for here, right? So way back when there was just me, and then there was me and an assistant, and then there was a couple of us. But today we have 10 staff in our School of Performing Arts. We have 6 administrators and 4 teaching staff. 2 of them work out full-time in schools, and 1 we just hired for the Addy space, and he'll be doing...
Who's that?
That's Isaac Scranton. He is he's our technical
I met him,
technical theater instructor.
Very cool. And wasn't, I think there was a technical class and then a skip in between when there wasn't, when I first arrived about 10 years ago.
It's a New Visions type of program.
I remember that because one of your students, I still follow him on Facebook, Ricky.
Really?
Ricky Vitus, who's now a big special effects guy. He was on the Sci-Fi Channel. He was on one of the reality shows, and he's, I don't know, I often don't connect to exactly who he's working for, but the things that he's doing, even back then,
are phenomenal.
I wanted to buy one of his little Frankenstein heads.
Darn.
No, he was just, he was fabulously talented even as a kid student.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about education programs nationwide, is the opportunity for non-traditional learners.
Right.
He was in a program that was not traditional, and he came here to do his, half of his schooling, and then would go back to his home school for the rest of it.
Oh, is that how it worked
Yeah,
back
that's
then?
how it worked.
So that was actually part of BOCES, or? Yeah, right.
They did their English credit here and their technology credit, and then they would go back to the school for the rest of the credits.
So do you secretly dream of and I'd like to thank Chris Sheehan. I'm accepting this Tony today. Do you? Come on.
No, I'm
you
totally
must think
behind
about
the
it.
scenes.
You
no,
must think
I do
about
not
it.
do this for the credit.
Or Proctors, fine School of Performing Arts. It has to happen. Well, we get such amazing kids. I'm lucky enough to get to see a lot of it behind the scenes. Yeah, let's talk about the Addy now, because certainly when we're right here now in what was formerly the Carl Company building, and then Carl's for local folks.
Yes.
And I know it was always their intention, the family, that Proctors would get this space.
Right.
So that's about when I came in, about 11 years ago. And before that, I think there was like a discount furniture store in here, if I remember correctly.
Carl Company.
No, but I meant in between. There was like an open storefront,
Yeah.
like a
I
mess
don't
kind of thing.
remember that.
Anyway, but we've never had anything on the third floor. We had a button in the elevator,
True.
but there wasn't even a floor on the third floor. And I've seen it. I've heard it at meetings being everything from a server farm to of course, as a source of revenue.
Office space.
Office space. We certainly sit on top of one another here, but it seemed very, very quickly, and maybe it wasn't in your world. I'd love to hear the behind the scenes.
No, it
where
does
it went
feel
from
nothing.
I don't know what's going to be there, to guess what, and this is what it's called, and can we get a logo? So why don't you
That's the next
walk us
epic
through that
leap.
a little
that,
bit?
That,
Right.
We talked for a few years, but when those conversations happen, you think, oh, it'll happen in 5 years or whatever. But it's all about funding and trying to get the leverage to build something up there with the right partners, and finally we did. So.
But was that like Philip coming to you and saying, "This is it"?
This was
It's
Philip.
gonna happen.
Philip constantly throws pasta at the wall, so what sticks, what sticks.
Right.
So there's a lot of pasta up
Right.
there. And so it's over the years him saying, we're going to do this, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do this, and come to this meeting. And so lots of those things happen behind the scenes that people never hear about
Right.
or know about. But there were dozens of ideas that were talked about for the third floor. What it is ultimately is like, a dream come true. We have finally have dedicated space for education programs, which we didn't. I mean, this facility is magnificent, but we didn't have dedicated space, right? So when we wanted to do a master class, we shared space with the shows that were coming into the GE Theater. Or if we want to do, summer programs, we have to do them around, shows that we bring in. So we have not had space that we get to program specifically for education.
Why don't you walk us through the Addy a little bit? Get off the elevator, and what do you see?
The Addy is on the third floor
Yeah.
of our space. It is the
I'm sorry,
Adeline,
I was going to say, and why is it the Addy?
the Adeline Graham Theatrical Training and Innovation Center. It is a symphony hall space. It is a smaller theater. It's a film and media lab, and it's a dance studio. It's all of those things on our third floor. They are all being programmed with education programs and through partnership with Empire State Youth Orchestra's Chime program. So in the front space we have Chime, which is an El Sistema program from Venezuela. It puts musical instruments in the hands of under-resourced students and teaches them how to play.
I wasn't aware that it was that came from Venezuela.
Sistema, yes,
Oh,
definitely.
that's interesting.
It's a wonderful program.
Yeah.
Suddenly the music starts filtering down into the staff offices about 3:30 every day. So
That's wonderful.
the theater space is going to be a multi-use space, which will house our after-school acting academy program for middle school students of the Schenectady City School District. It will also be producing shows up there for them. It's also our technical theater space, so the students, high school students who are here to learn technical theater skills will be serving as technicians for the acting academy performances. They'll also get hands-on opportunities as we do rentals in the space and movies in the space. And so they'll eventually, be able to be certified to be hired as technicians for the
So
space.
someone without a child or a grandchild in one of the productions, their first introduction to the space might be to come see an art film.
Right.
Let's say
right,
in that space.
Right.
That's
or
wonderful.
one of their first introductions might be through our weekly classes. So we now are going to offer classes year-round, acting classes, dance classes.
Is this for adults?
Yeah, adults and children.
Oh, wow.
Yep,
That's great.
all year long, a few days a week and on the weekends. So that will also be in the dance studio, in the theater, in the chime space, wherever we can put them in.
That is
All that will
spectacular.
happen.
That's
Plus film and
spectacular.
media programs.
So when does it start? When does the first thing start at the Addy?
January 2nd.
And,
Yeah.
and today's date, I didn't say, is November. What is today's date? 20th. November 20th. So that's
20th.
quite soon.
Right. Chime is already up there in the space.
And how does that express itself? Are there
Well,
kids coming through already, or?
Yes, there
Wow.
are.
Wow.
And, we hope over the next year
I mean,
or
the hammers
so-
just stopped banging, just so everybody knows at
We
home.
don't hear them.
Yeah, I mean, they just
they're
stopped
like little
constructing.
elves.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
this
well,
very
actually,
moment.
they're still working on our part of the
So
space.
they are a bit. I know that
Yeah.
the sound system's not fully in yet,
Right.
and they're still
Right.
working on it. Yeah.
We hope by next year we'll have between 400 and 500 students a year coming into that space.
Remarkable.
Yes.
Okay, this is crazy talk, but now the Addy. Let's pretend it's happening.
Okay.
What's next? I mean,
Ah.
we seem.
More pasta.
I mean, I'm not. I guess for me as the creative director, there's so many things to be proud of at Proctors.
Right.
But I've always been the
Never
most.
rest on your laurels.
I've always been the most proud of the education program.
Yeah.
From the very, that I'm a huge supporter from the get-go. And I think one day there might not even be a theater here in 75 years, but it'll be this giant educational institution, that they show some shows in occasionally. So if you were to put on your crazy thinking hat and Phillips at the same time, where are we headed? Could our program, let's say, be imported and infect another theater somewhere? I mean,
Sure.
I think we're
And
doing
it does
things very
already.
differently.
So there are things that we deliver at Capital Rep.
That's right.
That are really important to us. Like we make sure that we have an internship program there. We make sure that we continue to build, workforce development programming there as we go forward. After school program is really a trending hot topic for education. So we're gonna,
Right.
as we move into a new space there, we're gonna, try to establish ourselves in a new community over there and develop programming that's relevant over there.
How about in Saratoga? Will there be an education component?
Absolutely.
As well?
Yeah.
At
Well-
Universal Preservation Hall?
Yes.
Soon to go under construction itself,
Yeah.
right?
So we're in strategic planning phases for all of those at the same time that we're, growing into our space upstairs.
Thank you. That's job security for me, by the way, for a creative director. New identities. That's it.
Branding
So
and
thank you.
identities and all of that. Yes. Yes.
So if you could go back in time and talk
I never
to
would have guessed.
talk to Chris Sheehan on that day that Philip was speaking to you, what advice would you give her? How could you possibly? First of all, you obviously wouldn't believe what's happened in
I
just
wake
10
up
years.
sometimes and say I should pinch myself, right? If somebody 30 years ago said to me,
Yeah.
I knew I always wanted to be in the arts, right? But if somebody said, you're going to be a director of a performing arts center, of a school of the performing arts in a major performing arts center on the Broadway touring circuit, I would have been mind blown at that time. I couldn't have imagined the growth that we have done here at Proctors in such a small amount of time, I think, 15 years.
Would you have told her to hang on tight or
Oh,
run
sure.
away?
Oh
or
my gosh, I would say it would be a roller coaster that feels out of control at times.
Right.
But it always slows down. Thank goodness.
You're watching it from the outside, it always seemed like it had at least some gentle ups and downs, but now it's like, it really does feel like a juggernaut now.
Well,
like an unstoppable
It is
thing, right? I mean,
unstoppable.
it's not as though you could just, we'll take a break for a minute.
No,
That's not happening
there's
anymore.
no breaks, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Philip gave me advice long ago. He said, hang on for the ride
Right.
and, be used to gray. Nothing is black and white. You know,
Right.
as you build partnerships and develop programs, you need to be flexible and adaptable. So.
Well, I think that speaks to, you look around the office, right? People, it's not as though you can just move this and go to another theater and have almost the same job.
Right.
It's really, even in my small world of creative direction, there really isn't a lot in the capital region that would be as challenging or interesting as the continuing challenges here and the
Definitely
needs.
challenging.
Again,
Yes.
right now
And
we're
rewarding.
I'm sorry?
And rewarding.
And very rewarding, yeah. Well, challenge is reward
Yes.
in my world. I was the art director of the Times Union, and that was like more money, better insurance, but it's the challenges were very far away from one another.
Yeah.
You really had to have faith that something of interest might come up at
Right.
some time.
Right.
And that's hard for a creative person.
Yeah.
So do you feel it's pretty easy to retain quality staff?
It is now because they see a vision that's really remarkable and magnificent even for this region. You know, if
Right.
you want to work for a major performing arts center and are really looking for a wonderful career, Proctors is the place to be.
I'm glad you say that because I feel that way about our young artists.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly places in town where they can work and make more money.
Right.
But I've seen those portfolios.
Right.
And you might as well
Right.
just,
Right.
you better worry for your next job.
Right.
Because you'll spend 10 years at Beverage King somewhere and you'll have a BMW, but you have no good work, no national quality work.
Right, right.
No, you're not in that pressure,
Right.
that pressure cooker to create quality.
Yeah.
Whereas in our art department, you're basically part of your day, you're part of Disney.
Right.
You're part of Serino Coin. You're part of a New York City ad agency
Yeah.
making Broadway happen.
Yeah.
That's an almost unparalleled
Oh, absolutely.
experience in the capital region.
Right.
Because I would always tell young people, go away.
We're at the
go to New
national
York.
level. We definitely are.
Yeah.
And that's something, we talk about workforce development for students that we bring in, but it's for our own staff also.
Definitely,
You know,
definitely.
they imagine what they could put on a resume. I mean, I hope none of them leave, but
Sure.
it would be amazing growth that they've been able to show.
And money's great, but when you are in we're not a complete backwater, but we're not New York City either. And it's very, very easy to lose 10 years of your life with
Right.
work that
It's not
doesn't
meaningful.
matter, right? Doesn't matter to anywhere.
Definitely what we have.
So you mentioned like after school programs as being something new. What other things are happening in education? Is it new technology? Is it gaming? I mean, are there possibilities around that?
Definitely technology is
Yeah.
huge. Digital training is going to be big. There's a lot of special effects training that comes, all of our Broadway shows, you'll see all
Boy,
the
that's for
special
sure.
effects that are coming through there. So that's a huge trend.
Oh, let's pause there for a second because now haven't some of our kids actually worked with some of the teching that has come through?
That's a great national program that we've
Yeah.
developed. So that's called our Broadway Tech Program.
Right.
When
We should probably explain teching to the audience
why
as
don't
well.
you do that?
Okay, so teching happens when you go to see the show in New York City, this fabulous show, let's call it The Show. So you go to see The Show on Broadway, and it's either finishing its time there or continuing, but ready to also go on the road.
Right.
So how does it go on the road, right? So you
Right.
need that same set, those same drapes, those same sound devices. Well, now they have to fit in a truck
Yes.
and get packed up, unpacked at various theaters all over, different sizes, different specs. Teching comes in.
Yes.
So it has to go to some theater where it gets developed in that way. So the parts, we've seen the parts for these shows come from the United Kingdom, from other
over.
countries, from out west, from New York City, from
Yeah.
local suppliers like Adirondack,
Right.
to build set pieces, and they come here. We have a very big stage house here, so I've actually watched them as they tape the floor in smaller and smaller increments to pretend it's other theaters. That's how big
yes.
we are.
We're big.
So they can actually say, okay, now let's set up for this much smaller theater. Now, one thing that I never knew, little bragging of Proctors, I think it was when, sorry, Blue Man, I'll give away a secret, but Blue Man was here and they had these giant balls that you remember when they were here and they passed them
Yes, yes.
off the stage into the audience.
Yeah.
And I was looking and I had just been at the Bushnell like a week before in Connecticut. I said, where would those balls go in Connecticut? How could those balls, do you deflate them and reinflate them? They said, oh, it's a different show. So that was very eye-opening. I said, really? So they have to rehearse and be prepared for, let's say, I don't know how many demarcations there were, but certainly an A and a B version of the show where, guess what? You're not going to get the gigantic inflated balls because there's the stage house isn't large
We
enough.
get the A version.
We get the A version of all the shows because of the room, because of the foresight that
Right.
your husband actually and Philip had in the beginning to develop not put all the money out front with fancy velvet and a Chihuly sculpture and all those nice things,
darn.
which are nice to have, but to make sure that the guts. And that's
Right.
what I think people may not understand, and that's very important in attracting the big shows here. So here we are. So we attract, I know Philip, I'm sure Philip's been here before, and we've heard about the tax credits and how teching ends up here in the first place. That's a whole wonderful story in itself. But okay, so the show comes here now. We have all of these talented people. I remember when Ghost was here, which was a little before your program, but there were magicians, there were special effects people, there were a master illusionist, all
All
these
the designers.
wonderful, right? So
Right.
the theater that you're familiar with becomes transformed into a laboratory.
Right.
Right? So there's a seat, your velvet seat that you sit in, but in front of it is a big piece of plywood with 5 computer monitors and people buzzing back and forth, and they're experimenting with things. So then where did that come from? How did you look at that and say, this is an education opportunity?
It was an opportunity to build something that could be replicated across the nation
Hmm.
if other markets who are able to do technical rehearsals.
So
would
you're
do
saying
that.
it started here?
We built it. It's branded only exclusively to Proctors.
That's crazy.
So, and it really is kind of like a career orientation program for high school students. It's so that they can come and see what happens around a technical rehearsal, and we bring in industry professionals from both the touring company and also regionally to come and talk to the students about how they ended up in their position.
How has this been accepted by like the Broadway community, from like if it's Disney or
Right.
whoever?
So
How do
we
they
need-
feel about it?
We need their permission to do it, so we
course.
always ask, and Philip usually starts those conversations because they need to happen
Mm-hmm.
up there. And the first one we did was an American in Paris, of course,
big one.
because it's a huge one, and we
Highly technical show,
right,
right?
and we're also investors in the show, so we got their permission, and that was the first time we did it. And having their endorsement was certainly critical to our
Right.
ability to do it again and again.
So how many shows do we have under our belt
We've
now?
only done 2 so far, but we'll
Was
continue to do
American
them.
in Paris.
Every time we do a Broadway tech here, we will do one.
And-
The Color
and
Purple.
Color Purple was the
Color
next
Purple
one.
was the next one, yes.
And that was I guess, somewhat a much less technical show, right? A little
Yes.
straighter.
Yes, yes.
I know, because the time that they spent here. What a fabulous! Now you're suggesting that other theaters now are going to begin to do this as well.
There are some that may be able to.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because of our proximity to New York, we get the techs that other
Right.
markets can't get. So, but we'll continue to offer it regardless.
What a wonderful thing.
Yay.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I don't
Today?
think so.
We've
What
covered
else
that.
can
We've
I
covered
say?
everything.
Oh, gosh.
I just want to come back in 2 years and do this again, because I feel like it's going to be completely.
We're going to have another great big boom, I think, after the Addy. The Addy is the.
There's one thing we know at Proctors is you build the Addy and you say this is going to happen there, and then 5 more things happen there that you could possibly imagine. So.
Yes, that's Proctors, yes.
So you have to stay tuned. I just leave your computer on or TV on, and we'll just tune back in 3 or 4 years.
Yes, we'll tell you what else
and
is
we'll give
going
you an
on.
update. Well, this is Richard Lovrich again, signing off from the Historical Committee, and Chris Sheehan, and
Thank you, Richard.
yeah, we're glad to entertain you. I hope that you learned
I
a
hope
lot.
it was
I certainly
entertaining.
learned a lot. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you.